I'm up. Why, Chris Tufton. Why with the propaganda yesterday, man, you get me out of my bed early today. Eh? What a piece of propaganda you come with, man. But you know, where you get your talking from, man? What you know about AI? Artificial intelligence. Eh? Jamaican don't even know about AI. Majority of Jamaican, the little one in this sector, if you say AI to them don't even understand what they must say. Most of them don't even have smartphone. And most Jamaican don't go know if they use them camera and use them camera and them and talk on them phone. Take them picture and do them video. What kind of food is this here talk, sir? Here where Christopher Tufton comes, you know. Health Minister, you know, is a big lie and propaganda, you know, say PNP. I use artificial intelligence to tell lie pan them and people and tell lie to the Jamaican people and change up the Prime Minister and him say things where him not say and then use it change. Who know about, you know what you know about AI? Right now the world, because you don't know them things, you don't know about no computer and them things. Because most of them don't know about computer. But right now the world, even the Godfather will come up with these kind of things. I'm going to show it. Just even last month you saw. You can't see it on CNN and see it on anything at all. Yeah? Them concerned about it, say it move too fast because it can destroy the world. Because like it look its own self and it can be very destructive. Yeah? Siri, artificial intelligence. Yeah, Siri. But depend on your phone. Siri, because it learn, you know. Yeah? Like what Google use and it can find some little things and what have you, them big tech there. And them I tell them ease back. Ease back. I'm gonna teach you something. I'm gonna play what I'm saying because what I'm saying don't make no sense in the people. But it's a propaganda and a lie, you know. Him I tell you now. If you think of something good, him I do. Man, go study something before you come with a lie, man. That full of shit, Christopher, man. Then you are health minister, you don't know that, man. You don't really come here with a bag of lie, brother. Eh? It make you look fucking stupid, brother. Look here. I'm gonna teach him something. Most people don't know about AI. So them robot there, them have some chip, artificial intelligence. Them have some chip where build all them car and them thing there. What you think? But they make the human kind of robot now. And they make them have something where they make now, some software where they make where it a help in the doctor field, all them doctor robot and them thing, the artificial intelligence to man. It a get set up like it a pass human. And them afraid about it because it's more dangerous than nuclear. Where you get your tatting from, Tufton? Where you get it from? So you're one of the propagandists, them too, man. Let me play what I'm say. Look here, I'm going to play something and teach you something. Watch out.
Intelligent political strategy is a strategy of misrepresentation, propaganda, and character assassination.
Foolishness in attack. Because anything put out, they are so with good devil. Yes, it come out, it depends on the news, you know. Whether TVJ, whether this, whether JS and everything, all those things are there. So when I talk, just be a crap. It have timestamp. But when I talk, I say crap, him know nothing about artificial intelligence. I gotta teach him something. And I tell the Jamaican people lie. Something when I know about, I don't think him can use him phone good. Do whether they have them on it. Me not ask. Because most people, when you have a phone, you know, use a camera or, you know, you make call. Camera look clean and nice and you take a picture or do something or if you can run a little video. Be a shit him attack. Yeah.
And labor rights and Jamaicans must have none of it. There's a concept called AI. Yeah. Listen to labor rights. Because a lot of things are float around. When you combine artificial intelligence and TikTok, labor rights get confused.
Let me tell the people that you know there's it called AI. You see when I say him don't even know about AI, can I explain? So I can teach him. Yeah.
Artificial intelligence and TikTok, labor rights get confused.
Yeah.
They don't know what to believe and what to reject. They don't know what is true and what is false.
Yeah.
Because AI is the art of using technology to give the impression on. That people are say things when they don't say it.
You chat crap. All right, wanna play this?
People do things when they don't do it.
Yeah,
You
you know.
take off a man's head and you put another head on the body.
Shut up, but you take off your head and put it on your body. Can you know clothes and what have you have on? But take off head and put on body. That's not about no AI. That's what them talk about when them do it. Post put drunker, put our body, our head pan drunker body. Them talk about AI. And what am I say? What you say matter? What this shit matter about AI? Eh? Go and play this.
You change up the voice to make it sound like it's somebody.
Oh, you change up the voice and make it sound like somebody. Yeah, yeah. And you might say the Prime Minister, you know?
And the biggest target is the leader of the Jamaica Labour Party.
So that's the next layer again. Cause everything, a 3 card them, you know. Then thirdly, you know. We are third world and them thinking can trick people. But we are teaching about AI in the morning, yeah? Yeah? Do you understand?
Labour rights, take heed, take sleep, mark that.
Yeah, you remember tell them?
Approaching political season, you're going to see and hear with your ears and your eyes things that never took place.
You see what I tell them? Yeah, tell them something where them themselves they are the meeting when the man pray, when them say them live in a 1 room and then 2 room and all kind of things. Where you tell them say? Them are saying 8 things when never took place. You turn Donald Trump now. So you're one of the liar them man. And you're one of them must spell propaganda man. You're propagandist. We're gonna teach them something. Watch out.
And therefore, I'm saying to you here today, you need to take heed, ask questions, seek clarity, and as Labour rights we need to come together when we're not sure about what is happening. The time is now.
PS City man tell the people them, you know. Elon Musk against it, man. I know him alone.
With the trend of artificial intelligence,
yeah.
and as a government and as a minister, we bring some discussion to Parliament to establish some ground rules where people who create mischief by using artificial intelligence are brought to books and are sanctioned for that misrepresentation.
So you forget sanction, you know. So I play with Mark say, same time come in their meeting and answer him, hey, I waste, him a waste man, you know. Can just come with a bag of lies and propaganda and can. You can't can Jamaican. So we're going to teach about AI, yeah? Watch this.
Report that one of the leaders of the Jamaica Labour Party, boy, may I tell you, pressure I reach them, you know, man, because them start talk pure foolishness. Him claim say the PNP I use artificial intelligence. Forget them out. Well, first of all, me not use artificial intelligence. A real intelligence me use. Turn up the thing. Turn up the thing. Turn up the thing. Turn up. When them bring them full legislation to Parliament, when a bake like a cake, when a bake good, and we have to slice it and dice it and show them say it can't work and them have to fix it. A real intelligence we use for do that.
See it? Mark I tell about inner Parliament. When I tell you to fix the thing. Let me teach you about artificial intelligence because right now the world in a threat and you don't know Christopher Tufton. You don't know. This is the last one, you can go look it up. Look here. Look here, let me teach you about artificial intelligence. Look here. Listen here.
Jeffrey, thanks so much for joining us. So you left your job with Google in part because you say you want to focus solely on your concerns about AI. You've spoken out saying that AI could manipulate or possibly figure out a way to kill humans? How?
You hear that, Tufton? People are think right now about how AI put a life to itself and I ask some question where it want to take over it wicked and even the nuclear. You don't even know. This is the last month, you can go look it up. When you talk about put and about this and about use it, yeah, idiot. Poor Jamaican, them don't even know for using them phone to backside. And most of them phone and another, you know, too much smartphone. And what am I saying? Let me just repeat this again. We'll teach him something. If not, no sense,
discuss Jeffrey Hinton. Jeffrey, thanks so much for joining us. So you left your job with Google in part because you say you want to focus solely on your concerns.
And by the way, shit that the godfather this AI. Yeah? And I'm have concern right now. Just listen.
About AI, you've spoken out saying that AI could manipulate or possibly figure out a way to kill humans. How could it kill humans?
Well, eventually, if it gets to be much smarter than us, it'll be very good at manipulation because it will have learned that from us. And there are very few examples of a more intelligent thing being controlled by a less intelligent thing. And it knows how to program, so it'll figure out ways of getting around restrictions we put on it. It'll figure out ways of manipulating people to do what it wants.
Yeah.
So what?
So this is like what we're seeing at the movie, people. When machine take over and like it a kill human, yesterday it a come in a real life. Him the Godfather feet, So this is what you worry about. Him don't know about AI, Him will just stop to know about AI, AI is a dangerous thing, because they want to use it to make weapon of war, and like we see them, the kind of dark thing, them are soldiers. And it's dangerous. Elon must run from it too, man. All him and other people. This is the Godfather, this is the man we deal with it. This is one of the man from the early days. You see them, the Godfather of it. Now I'll show you something. Go and watch.
What do we do? Do we just need to pull the plug on it right now? Do we need to put in far more restrictions and backstops on this? How do we solve this problem?
It's not clear to me that we can solve this problem. I believe we should put a big effort into thinking about ways to solve the problem. I don't have a solution at present. I just want people to be aware that this is a really serious problem.
You know what I'm saying? And they got him one of them will come up with them kind of thing, but he don't have the solution. Yeah. So it's more dangerous right now that even nuclear and can play it on the ear. Where him come with, man? Where him get himself from, man? Because I have something when I tape last month too, where it a question woman and say like it feel alive. It can't dead, And I like how we live and die. So if it can program itself and take over, and it talk about where it want to take over and everything, See? So it can go rogue. Them have to be careful of it. You understand? All right.
And we need to be thinking about it very hard. I don't think we can stop the progress. I didn't sign the petition saying we should stop working on AI, because if people in America stop, people in China wouldn't.
You hear that? So if people in America stop working on AI, the people them will catch that China wouldn't. And they may use AI and control the world. So you understand? So you see where we are headed to a destruction, And then the AI itself talk to one another and take over this. Same like how them show Terminator. You see them do this thing and them go work on it, and you see what we in right now. So they might have see it. He might run out and a chatting bag of shit. And a spreading propaganda. Him they have no serious disease. Him does a chatting mouth. Him don't know how serious this is. Tough tongue. You just run your mouth. You don't even know how serious this. Listen, before you chat, you have always do a look study upon what you chat about. Don't come to Jamaican people with your bag of shit. Same like Terminator, like with that program. That thing that like it a run down for kill who to kill before one about AI. See? Yeah? They must rise the machine and data go on now. Yeah? You have different versions of this thing, and I tell you, it can be very dangerous. Him are one of the Godfather, one of the pioneer, and him, Elon Musk, the one of them, I give the warning about it. So it's dangerous, But if America pull the plug, and then China go ahead with it, them can set a little things and then them use it. So we say them kind of look a soldier in the place and all kind of things. But if it take a life at its own, mankind in a real danger, Mankind in a real danger. Yeah? Them have to know what they might do. All right. Just go and listen.
It's very hard to verify whether people are doing it.
There have been some whistleblowers who have been warning about the dangers of AI over the past few years. One of them, Timnit Gebru, was forced out of Google for voicing his concerns. Looking back on it, do you wish that you had stood behind these whistleblowers more?
Timnit's actually a woman.
Oh, sorry.
So they were rather different concerns from mine. I think it's easier to voice concerns if you leave the company first. And their concerns aren't as existentially serious as the idea of these things getting more intelligent than us and taking over.
More intelligent than us.
Steve Wozniak, one of the co-founders of Apple, is also speaking out about the dangers he fears will come from AI. Take a listen.
Now, AI is another more powerful tool, and it's going to be used by those people, you know, for basically really evil purposes. And I hate to see technology being used that way. It shouldn't be, and probably some types of regulation are needed.
It sounds like you agree. What
I agree with that, yes.
Yeah, what should that regulation look like?
I'm not an expert on how to do regulation. I'm just a scientist who suddenly realized that these things are getting smarter than us. And I want to sort of blow the whistle and say we should worry seriously about how we stop these things getting control over us. And it's going to be very hard. And I don't have the solutions. I wish I did.
Does there need to be a meeting of all of the tech groups and governments working on this, Google, China, whatever, and some sort of set of rules of the road? I mean, how do we even protect against bad actors or rogue nations harnessing AI?
Yeah. So rogue nation harness at this time I talk about. So them can use it against a nation, but say it's wicked and nuclear. Remember, it can go, remember a computer, you know. So it can go in the brain or anything. A matter of fact, it can launch a nuclear for the mind sharp. Because when I talk some evil the other day, we meet him. Him don't know about AI. The man does spread propaganda and does think about party and I tell Jamaican people about a shit. Man go study the thing before no chat no man. Eh? You go mention AI and chat about a shit to man. Then AI do some serious thing. Well, you have the robot them will build the car, them and what have you, and they use something in the hospital that do good, you know. You understand? Some are write all essay and write movie script and write music, you know. No, you know. You have software, you know. But you know, and I write it more than, and I pass some things, you know. It get very intelligent. More than mankind. And that can be dangerous. And it asks question. Because it's a learn, you know. It's a learn. See? Him don't know them thing and never watch them thing before. See? So him just run out with something. What for burn him? Christopher Tufton, what for burn you? With the propaganda. Eh? Backside, man. Yeah.
For some things, it's very hard, like them using AI for manipulating electorates or for fighting wars with robot soldiers.
Yeah, you're fighting war with robot soldier. We're more concerned about that with AI. Most Jamaicans don't even know how AI work. Same like you have the algorithms, kind of AI, but this now more advanced. Them technology, them one are more advanced than what I go on. Seeing algorithm advanced, we can learn and send your things and everything. So you have a time, you know, where when this broke out, you know, remember them show you them kind of like a movie, you have to think about it, you know. It try control the thing. And then like it are dead. Can't fix itself and fix other thing. And like it have heart and them thing, but have a brain and it will learn faster than us. See? Them do something where them can't stop. Them show it in a movie and them welcome in the real world. Yeah? Yeah, when they say soldier artificials, remember just play it back. Tufton, listen and learn.
A meeting of all of the tech groups and governments working on this, Google, China, whatever, and some sort of set of rules of the road? I mean, how do we even protect against bad actors or rogue nations harnessing AI?
Honestly.
So for some things, it's very hard, like them using AI for manipulating electorates or for fighting wars with robot soldiers. But for the existential threat of AI taking over, we're all in the same boat. It's bad for all of us. And so we might be able to get China and the US to agree on things like that. It's like nuclear weapons. If there's a nuclear war, we all lose. And it's the same if these things take over. So...
You know here now? You mentioned the nuclear war, I just tell you. Nuclear war we all lose. And if them things take over, this are the threat about, this is where them are think about the AI. Him are one of the creator. Him are one of them who develop it up. Them kind of way, yeah. And him are come out now and blow whistle. Enough people are fret about that. China them get the technology, Russia them get it. So if America pull out so and them get a lead, you know, so something to take over. So artificial intelligence and a plating around here, you know. And a plating around here. See? Christopher Tufton, if you don't know where you are, man, go sit down, man. You understand? Just sit down, man. You understand? And he has spread propaganda. Who the pan TikTok now having the time about take off your head and put on this. This is why your troll them used to do that. Now, I've not nothing to do with it. These are just some people that say, you talk about AI. Eh? I want to you, man.
since we're all in the same boat, we should be able to get agreement between China and the US on things like that.
Do you think that tech companies will be the solution, or are they so invested in this financially, and also, let's be frank, in terms of power, that they're not going to be part of the solution here?
I think the tech companies are the people most likely to be able to see how to keep this stuff under control.
Under control.
Jeffrey Hinton, thank you so much. Come back. We have more questions.
This is just last month. So Tufton, I can't play enough more to you. So you see, when you run out, all right, remember play a little longer one day. And we can teach you about them kind of little things. Where you get the talking from, Tufton, man? You know, see, you now look bad, man. Stop spreading propaganda and fake chatting and one bag of piece of shit, man. Then people that get something and just put up, they say about AI. And you have a thing and if you know, I'm going to see what I'm going to go this and that, we are this. You know, AI tough. Eh? Yeah.
Machine learning, whatever we want to call it.
I think it's a pivotal moment.
See me, look at
ChatGPT has shown that these big language models can do amazing things, and the general public has suddenly caught on.
Yeah, we have.
Because Microsoft released something. And they're suddenly aware of stuff that people at the big companies have been aware of for the last 5 years.
Yeah. What did you think the first time you used ChatGPT?
Well, I've used lots of things that came before ChatGPT that were quite similar. So ChatGPT itself didn't amaze me much. Okay. GPT-2, which was one of the earlier language models, amazed me. And a model at Google amazed me that could actually explain why a joke was funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Natural language, it'll tell you.
Yeah, you tell it a joke, and not for all jokes, but for quite a few of them, it can tell you why it's funny.
Okay.
And it seems very hard to say it doesn't understand when it can tell you why a joke's funny.
So if ChatGPT wasn't all that surprising or impressive, were you surprised by the public's reaction to it? Because the reaction was big.
Yes, I think everybody was a bit surprised by how big the reaction was, that it was the sort of fastest growing app ever.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't have been surprised, but people, the researchers, had kind of got used to the fact that these things actually worked.
Yeah. You were famously like half a century ahead of the curve on this AI stuff. Go ahead, correct me, go ahead.
Not really.
Not really, because?
There were two schools of thought in AI. There was mainstream AI.
And then there was you and like five friends.
Yeah, that thought it was all about reasoning and logic. And then there was neural nets, which weren't called AI then, which thought that you better study biology because those were the only things that really worked. And so mainstream AI based its theories on reasoning and logic. And we based our theories on the idea that connections between neurons change, and that's how you learn. And it turned out in the long run, we came up trumps. But in the short term, it looked kind of hopeless.
Well, looking back, knowing what you know now, do you think there's anything you could have said then that would have convinced people?
I could have said it then, but it wouldn't have convinced people. And what I could have said then is, the only reason that neural networks weren't working really well in the 1980s was because the computers weren't fast enough and the data sets weren't big enough. But back in the 80s, the big issue was, could you expect a big neural network with lots of neurons in it, compute nodes, and connections between them?
So here are the professor, here are the man who connect up something, I'm one of the Godfather feet. More you listen, Tufton. I know about AI, artificial intelligence, yeah? Just go and listen.
That learns by just changing the strengths of the connections. Could you expect that to just look at data and with no kind of innate prior knowledge, learn how to do things? And people in mainstream AI thought that was completely ridiculous.
It sounds a little ridiculous.
It is a little ridiculous, but it works.
And how did you know, or why did you intuit that it would work?
Because the brain works, because that's, you have to explain how come we can do things, and how come we can do things like we didn't evolve for, like reading. Reading's much too recent for us to have had significant evolutionary input to it. But we can learn to do that, and mathematics, we can learn that. So there must be a way to learn in these neural networks.
Yesterday, Nick Frost, who used to work with you, told us that you're not really that interested in creating AI. Your core interest is just in understanding how the brain works.
Yes, I'd really like to understand how the brain works. Obviously, if your failed theories of how the brain works lead to good technology, you cash in on that and get grants and things. But I really would like to know how the brain works. And I think there's currently a divergence between the artificial neural networks that are the basis of all this new AI and how the brain actually works. I think they're going different routes now.
So we're still not going about it the right way.
That's what I believe. This is my personal opinion. But all of the big models now use a technique called backpropagation.
Which you helped popularize in the 80s.
Which I helped popularize in the 80s, very good. And I don't think that's what the brain's doing.
Explain why.
Okay, there's a fundamental difference between there's two different paths to intelligence. So one path is the biological path, where you have hardware that's a bit flaky, an analog. So what we have to do is communicate by using natural language, also by showing people how to do things, imitation and things like that. But instead of being able to communicate 100 trillion numbers, we can only communicate what you can say in a sentence, which is not that many bits per second.
Yeah.
And so we're really bad at communicating compared with these current computer models that run on digital computers.
And it's almost infinite. They're able to send
Their
signals.
communication bandwidth is huge because they're exactly the same model. They're clones of the same model running on different computers. And because of that, they can see huge amounts of data because different computers can see different data and then they can combine what they learned.
More than any person could ever comprehend.
Far more than any person could ever comprehend.
And yet somehow we're smarter than them still.
Okay, so they're like idiot savants, right? ChatGPT knows much more than any one person. If you had a competition...
know much more than any one person now because them upgrade that. You see that? You hear this? Tough tongue if you go with the foolishness.
About, you know, how much you know. It would just wipe out any one person.
Do amazing at bar trivia.
Yes, it would do amazing, and it would do amazing, and it can do it can write poems, it can, you know. They're not so good at reasoning. We're better at reasoning. We have to extract our knowledge from much less data. So we've got 100 trillion connections, most of which we learn, but we only live for 1 billion seconds, which isn't very long.
Yeah, them scientists say you live for 1 billion seconds, not very long. Second, you know, 1 billion. You don't go live for 1 billion seconds. Hear this now.
Whereas things like ChatGPT have run for much more time than that to absorb all this data, but on many different computers.
1986, you publish a thing in Nature that is the idea we're going to have a sentence of words and it'll predict the last word.
Yes, that was the first language model.
That's basically what we're doing now.
Yes and no.
1986 was a long time ago. Why still did people not say, oh, okay, I think he's onto something?
Oh, because back then, if you asked how much data I trained that model on, I had a little simple world of just family relationships. There were 112 possible sentences, and I trained it on 104 of them and checked out whether it got the last 8 right.
Okay, and how did it do?
It got most of the last 8 right.
Okay.
It did better than symbolic AI.
So it's just that the computers weren't powerful enough at the time.
The computers we have now are millions of times faster. They're parallel, but they can do millions of times more computation. So I did a little computation. If I'd taken the computer I had back in 1986 and I'd started learning something on it, it would still be running now and not have got there. And that's stuff that would now take a few seconds to learn.
Did you know that's what was holding you back?
I didn't know it. I believed that might be what was holding us back. But people sort of made fun of the idea that, the claim that, well, you know, if I just had a much bigger computer, much more data, everything would work. And the reason it doesn't work now is because we haven't got enough data and enough compute. That's seen as a sort of lame excuse for the fact that your thing doesn't work.
Was it hard in the 90s doing this work?
In the 90s, computers were improving, but yes. So there were other learning techniques that on small data sets worked at least as well as neural networks and were easier to explain and had much fancier mathematical theory behind them. And so people within computer science lost interest in neural networks. Within psychology, they didn't, because within psychology, they're interested in how people might actually learn. And these other techniques looked even less plausible than backpropagation.
Yeah. Which is an interesting part of your background. You came to this not because you were interested in computers necessarily, but because you were interested in the brain.
Yes, I sort of decided, I was interested in psychology originally, then I decided we were never going to understand how people work without understanding the brain. The idea that you could do it without worrying about the brain, that was a sort of fashionable idea back in the 70s, but I decided that wasn't on. You had to understand how the brain worked.
So we fast forward now to the 2000s. Is there a key moment you think back to as a turning point when it was like, okay, our side is going to prevail in this?
Around 2006, we started doing what we call deep learning. Before then, it had been hard to get neural nets with many layers of representation to learn complicated things. And we found better ways of doing it, better ways of initializing the networks, called pre-training. And the P in ChatGPT stands for pre-training.
Okay. And the T is transformer.
And G is generative.
Yeah.
And it was actually generative models that provided this better way of pre-training neural nets. So the seeds of it were there in 2006. By 2009, we'd already produced something that was better than the best speech recognizers at recognizing which phoneme you were saying.
Using different technology than all the other speech recognizers were.
Than the standard approach,
Yeah.
which had been tuned for 30 years. There were other people using neural nets, but they weren't using deep neural nets.
And then there's a big thing happens in 2012.
Yes, actually two big things.
Okay.
One is that the research we'd done in 2009, done by two of my students over a summer, that led to better speech recognition, that got disseminated to all the big speech recognition labs at Microsoft and IBM and Google. And in 2012, Google was the first to get it into a product. And suddenly, speech recognition on the Android became as good as Siri, if not better. So that was a deployment of deep neural nets applied to speech recognition 3 years earlier. At the same time as that happened, within a few months of that happening, two other students of mine developed an object recognition system that would look at images and tell you what the object was. And it worked much better than previous systems.
How did this system work?
Okay, there was someone called Fei Li and her collaborators who created a big database of images, like 1 million images, of 1,000 different categories. You'd have to look at an image and give your best guess about what the primary object was in the image. So the images would typically have one object in the middle. Yeah. And they'd have to say things like bullet train, or husky, and the other systems were getting like 25% errors, and we were getting like 15% errors.
Okay.
Within a few years, that 15% went down to 3%, which was about human level.
And can you explain in a way people would understand the difference between the way they were doing it and the way your team did it?
I can try.
That's all we can hope for.
Okay. So suppose you wanted to recognize a bird in an image.
Okay.
The image itself, let's suppose it's a 200 by 200 image. That's got 200 times 200 pixels, and each pixel has 3 values for the 3 colors RGB. And so you've got 200 by 200 by 3 numbers in the computer. It's just numbers in the computer, right? And the job is to take those numbers in the computer and convert them to a string that says bird.
Okay.
So how would you go about doing that? And for 50 years, people in standard AI tried to do that and couldn't. Okay, it's tricky to convert a bunch of numbers into.
So just learn a Tufton. Which people have their microphone now, and I tell you how them develop AI, how it get dangerous now. Him are the godfather, and just listen and learn. Yeah.
A label that says bird. So here's a way you might go about it. At the first level of feature, you might make feature detectors, things that detect little combinations of pixels.
Okay.
So you might make a feature detector that said, look, if all these pixels are dark and all these pixels are bright, I'm going to turn on.
Okay.
And so that feature detector would represent an edge here,
okay,
a vertical edge. You might have another one that said, if all these pixels are bright and all these pixels are dark, I'll turn on. That would be a feature detector that represented a horizontal edge.
Okay.
And you could have others for edges at different orientations.
We got a lot of work to do. All we've done is made a box.
Right. So we've got to have a whole lot of feature detectors like that. And that's what you actually have in your brain.
Okay.
So if you look in a cat or monkey cortex, it's got feature detectors like that. Then at the next level, you might say, If you were wiring it up by hand, you would create all these little feature detectors. At the next level, you would say, okay, suppose I have two edge detectors that join at a fine angle. That could just be a beak. So at the next level up, we'll have a feature detector that detects two of the lower level detectors joining at a fine angle.
Okay.
We might also notice a bunch of edges that sort of form a circle. We might have a detector for that.
Okay.
Then at the next level up, we might have a detector that says, hey, I found this beak-like thing, and I find a circular thing in roughly the right spatial relationship to make the eye and the beak of a bird. And so at the next level up, you'd have a bird detector that says, if I see those two...
You study programming, you know. Them scientists are study, like when I tell you your brain, and just listen to the study. This is another the programming. Where that program put in some program. Enough people study programming. This deeper than that, brother. This deeper than that. Enough people study programming. This deeper than that. Just hear what I say. Them create the thing, man.
There, I think it might be a bird.
Okay.
And you could imagine wiring all that up by hand.
Okay.
And so the idea of backpropagation is just put in random weights to begin with. And now the feature detectors will just be rubbish. They'll just be garbage.
Okay.
Okay. But look to see what it predicts.
Okay.
And if it happened to predict bird, it wouldn't. But if it happened to, leave the weights alone.
You got it right.
The connection strengths. But if it predicts cat, then what you do is you go backwards through the network and you ask the following question. And you can ask this with a branch of mathematics called calculus, but you just need to think about the question. And the question is, how should I change this connection strength so it's less likely to say cat and more likely to say bird? That's called the error, the discrepancy, right?
Okay.
And you figure out for every connection strength how I should change it a little bit to make it more likely to say bird and less likely to say cat.
And a person's figuring that out, or the algorithm is set to
A
work?
person has said, this is a bird. So a person looked at the image and said it's a bird.
Yeah.
It's not a cat, it's a bird.
Yeah.
So that's a label supplied by a person. Yeah. But then the algorithm, backpropagation, is just a way of figuring out how to change every connection strength to make it more likely to say bird and less likely to say cat.
It just keeps trying, keep turning the dials.
It just keeps doing that. And now if you showed enough birds and enough cats, when you showed a bird, it'll say bird, and when you showed a cat, it'll say cat. And it turns out that works much, much better than trying to wire everything by hand.
And that's what your students did on this image database?
That's what they did on the image database, yes. And they got it to work really well. Now, they were very clever students. In fact, one of them, Ilya Sutskova, is also one of the main people behind ChatGPT. So that was a huge moment in AI, and ChatGPT was another huge moment, and he was actually involved in both of them.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, maybe it's cold in the room. You got to the end of the story, I got shivers. The idea that you do this little dial thing and it says bird, it feels like just an amazing breakthrough.
Yeah, it was. Mainly because the other people in computer vision thought, okay, so these neural nets, they work for simple things like recognizing a handwritten digit. But that's not a real complicated image with sort of natural background and stuff. It's never going to work for these big complicated images. And then suddenly it did.
Yeah.
And to their credit, the people who've been really staunch critics of neural nets and said these things are never going to work, when they worked, they did something that scientists don't normally do, which is said, oh, it worked, we'll do that.
People see it as a huge shift.
Yes, it was quite impressive that they flipped very fast because they saw that it worked better than what they were doing.
You make this point that when people are thinking both about their machines and about ourselves and the way we think language in, language out, must be language in the middle.
Yes.
And this is an important misunderstanding.
Yeah,
Can you just explain that?
I think that's complete rubbish.
Yeah.
So if that were true, and it were just language in the middle, you'd have thought that approach, which is called symbolic AI, would have been really good at doing things like machine translation, which is just taking English in and producing French out or something. You'd have thought manipulating symbols was the right approach for that. But actually, neural nets work much better. And Google Translate, when they switched from doing that kind of approach to using neural nets, they did much better. What I think you've got in the middle is you've got millions of neurons, and some of them are active and some of them aren't. And that's what's in there. The only place you'll find the symbols are at the input and at the output.
We're not exactly at the University of Toronto. We're close to the University of Toronto. At universities here and around the world, we're teaching a lot of people to code. Does it still make sense to be teaching so many people to code?
I don't know the answer to that. In about 2015, I famously said it didn't make sense to be teaching radiologists to recognize things in images, because within the next 5 years, computers will be better at it.
Yeah. Are we all about to be radiologists, though?
Well, then computers are not better at it. I was wrong. It's going to take 10 years, not 5. I wasn't wrong in spirit. I just got it out by a factor of 2. Computers are now comparable with radiologists at a lot of medical images.
Yeah.
They're not way better at all of them yet.
But they'll only
will
get
be.
better.
Yeah. So I think there'll be a while when it's still worth having coders, and I don't know how long that'll be, but we'll need less of them, maybe. Or we'll need the same number and they'll be able to achieve a whole lot more.
Let's talk a minute about Cohere. We went over and visited them yesterday. You're an investor in them. Maybe the question is just like, how'd they convince you? What was the pitch that convinced you, I want to invest in this?
So they're good people, and I've worked with several of them.
Yeah.
And they were one of the first companies to realize that you need to take these big language models.
Yeah, I'm saying they might need less coder. Let them need less coding. Less of them, and maybe the same amount, but it'll learn it, it'll learn
being
itself.
Developed at places like Google and other places, OpenAI, and make them available to companies. So it's going to be enormously valuable to companies to be able to use these big language models. And so that's what they've been doing, and they've got a significant lead in that. So that's why I think they're going to be successful.
Another thing you've said that I just find fascinating, so I want to get you to talk about it, is the idea that there'll be kind of a new kind of computer that will be sent to this problem. What is that idea?
So there's the biological route to intelligence, where every brain is different, and we have to communicate knowledge from one to another by using language. And there's the current AI version of neural nets, where you have identical models running on different computers, and they can actually share the connection strength, so they can share billions of numbers.
This is how we make a bird.
Yeah. So they can share all the connection strengths for recognizing a bird, and one can learn to recognize cats, and the other can learn to recognize birds, and they can share their connection strengths, and now each of them can do both things.
Right.
And that's what's happening in these big language models they're sharing. But that only works in digital computers, because they have to be able to do identical things. And you can't make different biological brains behave identically, so you can't share the connection strengths.
But why wouldn't we stick with digital computers?
Because of the power consumption. You need a lot of power. It's getting less as chips get better, but you need a lot of power to do this. To run a digital computer, you have to run it at such high power that it behaves exactly in the right way. Whereas if you're willing to run at much lower power, like the brain is, then you'll allow a bit of noise and so on, but that particular system will adapt to the kind of noise in that particular system. And the whole thing will work even though you're not running it at such high power that it behaves exactly as you intended. And the difference is the brain runs on 30 watts. A big AI system needs like a megawatt. So we're training on 30 watts, and these big AI systems are using, because they've got lots of copies of the same thing, they're using like a megawatt. So, you know, you're talking factor of the order of 1,000 in the power requirements. And so I think there's going to be a phase when we train on digital computers, but once something's trained, we run it on very low power systems. So if you want your toaster to be able to have a conversation with you, and you want a chip in it that only costs a couple of dollars, but can do ChatGPT, that'd better be a low power analog chip.
What are kind of like the next things you think this technology will do that will impact people's lives?
It's hard to pick one thing. I think it's going to be everywhere, right? It's already sort of getting to be everywhere. ChatGPT has just made a lot of people realize that it's going to be everywhere. But it's already, you know, when Google does search, it uses big neural nets to help decide what's the best thing to show you. We're at a transition point now where ChatGPT is this kind of idiot savant, and it's also doesn't really understand about truth. It's been trained on lots of inconsistent data. It's trying to predict what someone will say next on the web.
Yeah.
And people have different opinions. And it has to have a kind of blend of all these opinions so that it can model what anybody might say. It's very different from a person who tries to have a consistent worldview.
Yeah.
Particularly if you want to act in the world, it's good to have a consistent worldview. And I think one thing that's going to happen is we're going to move towards systems that can understand different worldviews and can understand that, okay, if you have this worldview, then this is the answer. And if you have this other worldview, then that's the answer.
We get our own truths.
Well, that's the problem, right? Because what you and I probably believe, unless you're an extreme relativist, is there actually is a truth to the matter.
Certainly on many topics.
On many topics.
Or even most topics.
Yeah,
You
like
hope-
the Earth is actually not flat. It just looks flat, right?
Yeah,
And
so do we really want a model that says, well, for some people, like, we don't know?
that's going to be a big issue, and we don't know how to deal with that at present.
Yeah,
And I don't think Microsoft knows how to deal with it either.
they don't. And it seems to be a huge governance challenge.
Yeah.
Who makes these decisions?
It's very tricky things. You don't want some big for-profit company deciding what's true. It doesn't make
But
sense.
they're controlling how we turn the
Well,
neurons.
Google is very careful not to do that at present. What Google will do is refer you to relevant documents, which will have all sorts of opinions in them.
Well, they haven't released their chat product, at least as we speak.
Right.
But we've seen, at least the people that have released chat products feel like there are certain things they don't want to be said by their voice. And so they go in there and meddle with it so it won't say offensive things.
Yeah, but there's a limit to what you can do that way. There's always going to be things you didn't think of, right?
Yeah.
So I think Google is going to be far more careful than Microsoft when it does release a chatbot.
Yeah.
And it'll probably come with lots of warnings. This is just a chatbot,
Yeah.
and don't necessarily believe what it says.
Careful in the labeling or careful in the way they meddle with it so it doesn't do lousy things?
All of those things. Careful in how they present it as a product and careful in how they train it.
Yeah.
And do a lot of work to prevent it from saying bad things. And
But who gets to decide what a bad thing is?
some bad things are fairly obvious.
But many of the most important ones are not.
Yes. So that is a big open issue at present.
Yeah,
I think
they might want to prevent it from saying bad things and do bad
Microsoft was
things.
extremely brave to release ChatGPT.
Yeah. Do you see this as like a larger, some people see this as a larger societal thing? We need either regulation or big public debates about how we handle these issues.
Well, when it comes to the issue of what's true, I mean, do you want the government to decide what's true? There's this big problem, right?
Yeah.
You don't want the government doing it either.
I'm sure you've thought deeply on this question for a long time. How do we navigate the line between you just send it out into the world and we find ways to curate it?
Like I say, I don't know the answer, and I don't believe anybody really knows how to handle these issues.
You
We're
hear
gonna have
that?
to learn quite fast how to handle these issues because it's a big problem at present. But
Yeah.
how it's going to be done, I don't know. But I suspect, as a first step, at least these big language models are going to have to understand that there are different points of view and that completions it makes are relative to a point of view.
Some people are worried that this could take off very quickly and we just might not be ready for that. Does that concern you?
It does a bit. Until quite recently, I thought it was going to be like 20 to 50 years before we have general purpose AI. Yeah. And now I think it may be 20 years or less. So
Mark said
Okay.
20 years or
Some
less.
people think it could be like 5. Is that silly?
I wouldn't completely rule that possibility out now. Whereas a few years ago, I would have said no way.
Okay. And then some people say AGI could be massively dangerous to humanity because we just don't know what a system that's so much smarter than us will do. Do you share that concern?
I do a bit. I mean, obviously what we need to do is make this synergistic, have it so it helps people. And I think the main issue here, well, one of the main issues is the political systems we have. So I'm not confident that President Putin is going to use AI in ways that help people.
Like even if, say, the US and Canada and a bunch of countries say, okay, we're going to put these guardrails up, then how do you?
Yeah, it's particularly for things like autonomous lethal weapons.
Okay.
We'd like to have something like Geneva Conventions, like chemical weapons. People decided they were so nasty they weren't going to use them, except just occasionally. But I mean, basically they don't use them. People would love to get a similar treaty for autonomous lethal weapons, but I don't think there's any way they're going to get that. I think if Putin had autonomous lethal weapons, he would use them right away.
This is like the most pointed version of the question, and you can just laugh it off or not answer it if you want, but what do you think the chances are of AI just wiping out humanity? Can we put a number on that?
It's somewhere between 0% and 100%.
Yeah. For wipe out humanity, are somewhere between 0 or 100%. They man create the thing, you know. They create the thing, and you hear this? Yeah? It's a dangerous thing. It's good, you know, but have it bad side because it won't find itself. All right. Let me just repeat that what just said. Somewhere between. When just say?
Had autonomous lethal weapons, he would use them right away.
This is like the most pointed version of the question, and you can just laugh it off or not answer it if you want, but what do you think the chances are of AI just wiping out humanity? Can we put a number on that?
It's somewhere between 0% and 100%.
Okay, so
I think it's not inconceivable.
Okay.
That's all I'll say.
Okay.
I think if we're sensible, we'll try and develop it so that it doesn't. But what worries me is the political systems we're in, where it needs everybody to be sensible.
There's a massive political challenge, it seems to me, and there's a massive economic challenge in that you can have a whole lot of individuals who pursue the right course, and yet the profit motive of corporations may not be as cautious as the individuals who work for them.
Maybe. I mean, I only really know about Google. That's the only corporation I've worked for. And
they've been among the most cautious.
They're extremely cautious about AI because they've got this wonderful search engine that gives you the answers you want to see, and they can't afford to risk that. Whereas Microsoft has Bing, and if Bing disappeared, Microsoft would hardly notice.
Yeah. But it was easy for Google to take it slow when there wasn't someone nipping at their heels. And this seems to be exactly the issue.
So Google has
this
actually
race.
been in the lead. I mean, transformers were invented at Google.
Right.
The big language models, early ones were at Google. But
and they kind of kept it in your lab.
They're being much more conservative, and I think rightly so.
Yes. But now they feel this pressure.
Yeah, and so they're developing a system called BARD that they're going to put out there, and they're doing lots and lots of testing of it. But they're going to be, I think, a lot more cautious than Microsoft.
You mentioned autonomous weapons. Let me give you a chance just to tell this story. What's the connection between that and how you ended up in Canada?
Okay, there were several reasons I came to Canada, but one of them was certainly not wanting to take money from the US Defense Department. This was at the time of Reagan, when they were mining the harbors in Nicaragua. And it was interesting. I was at a big university in Pittsburgh, and I was one of the few people there who thought that mining the harbors in Nicaragua was really wrong. So I felt like a fish out of water.
And you saw that this was where the money was coming from for this kind of work.
So at that department, almost all their money came from the Defense Department.
You started to talk about the concerns that bringing this technology to warfare could present. What are your concerns?
Oh, that the Americans would like to replace their soldiers by AI soldiers, and they're trying to work towards that. And
what evidence do you see of that?
I'm on a mailing list from the US Defense Department. I'm not sure they know I'm on the mailing list.
It's a big list. They didn't notice you're there.
Yeah.
You might be off tomorrow.
I might be off tomorrow.
What's on the list?
Oh, they just describe various things they're going to do. There's some disgusting things on there.
Okay. What disgusts you?
The thing that disgusted me most was a proposal for a self-healing minefield. So the idea is, look at it from the point of view of the minefield. When some silly civilian trespasses into the minefield, they get blown up, and that makes a hole in the poor minefield. So it's got a gap in now, so it's not fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So the idea is maybe nearby mines could communicate, and maybe they could move over a bit, and they called that healing. And it was just the idea of talking about healing for these things that blow the legs off children. I mean, and the healing being about the minefield healing. Yeah. That disgusted me.
There is this argument that though the autonomous systems might play a role in helping the warfighter, it's ultimately a human making the decision.
Here's what worries me. If you wanted to make an effective autonomous soldier, you'd need to give it the ability to create sub-goals. In other words, it has to realize things like, okay, I want to kill that person over there, but to get over there, how am I going to get over there? And then it has to realize, well, if I could get to that road, I could get there more quickly. So it has a sub-goal of getting to the road. So as soon as you give it the ability to create its own sub-goals, it's going to become more effective. And so people like Putin are going to want robots like that. But as soon as it's got an ability to create sub-goals, you have what's called the alignment problem, which is how are you sure it's not going to create sub-goals that are going to be not good for people, not good for you?
Who knows who's on that road?
Who knows who's on that road? And if these systems are being developed by the military, the idea of wiring in some rule that says never hurt a person, well, they're being designed to hurt people.
Yeah. Do you see any way out of this? Is it a treaty? What is it?
I think the best bet is something like a Geneva Convention, but it's going to be very difficult. I think if there was a lot of public outcry, that might persuade. I can imagine the Biden administration going for something like that with enough public outcry. But then you have to deal with Putin.
Yeah. Okay, we've covered so much. I think I have like 2 more things.
There's one more thing I want to say.
Yeah, go for it.
You could ask me the question, some people say that these big models are just autocomplete.
Well, on some level, the models are autocomplete. We're told that the large language models, they're just predicting the next word. Is that not so simple?
No, that's true. They are just predicting the next word.
Okay.
And so they're just autocomplete. But ask yourself the question of, what do you need to understand about what's been said so far in order to predict the next word accurately? And basically, you have to understand what's been said to predict the next word accurately.
Yeah.
So you're just autocomplete too, in the same sense as they are. You can predict the next word, maybe not as well as ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But to do that, you have to understand the sentence. So let me give you a little example from translation. It's a very Canadian example.
Okay.
Suppose I take the sentence, the trophy would not fit in the suitcase because it was too big. And I want to translate that into French.
Okay.
Well, when I say the trophy would not fit in the suitcase because it was too big, you assume the it refers to trophy.
I do.
And in French, trophy has a particular gender, so you know what pronoun to use.
Yeah.
But suppose I say the trophy would not fit in the suitcase because it was too small. Now you think that it refers to suitcase.
Right.
And that has a different gender in French. So in order to translate that sentence to French, you have to know when it wouldn't fit in because it was too big, it's the trophy that's too big. And when it wouldn't fit in because it was too small, it's the suitcase that's too small. And that means you have to understand about spatial relations and containment and so on. Yeah. So you have to understand just to do machine translation or to predict that pronoun. If you want to predict that pronoun, you've got to understand what's being said. It's not enough just to treat it as a string of words.
Yeah. I mean, this gets me to another thing you've pointed out, which is kind of a either exciting or troubling idea, that you working intimately in this field for as long as anyone, describe the progress as, well, we had this idea, and we tried it, and it worked, and so we get a couple decades of back propagation. We have this idea for a transformer, now we'll do some, but there's hundreds of other ideas that haven't been tried out.
Yes. So I think even if we didn't have any new ideas, just making computers go faster and getting more data will make all this stuff work better. We've seen that as they scale up ChatGPT. It's not radically new ideas they're adding, it's just more connections and more data to train it with. But in addition to that, there's going to be new ideas like transformers, and they're going to make it work much better.
Are we close to the computers coming up with their own ideas for improving themselves?
Yes, we might be.
And then it could just go fast.
That's an issue, right? We have to think hard about how to control that.
Yeah.
How to control it?
We don't know. We haven't been there yet, but we can try.
Okay, that seems kind of concerning.
Yes.
Do you have any, you're seen as like a godfather of this industry. Do you have any concern about what you've wrought?
I do a bit. On the other hand, I think whatever's going to happen is pretty much inevitable. That is, one person stopping doing research wouldn't stop this happening. If my impact is to make it happen a month earlier, that's about the limit of what one person can do.
There's this idea of and I'm going to get it wrong, the short runway and the long takeoff. Maybe we need time to prepare, or maybe it's better if it happens quickly because then people will have urgency around the issue rather than like creep. Do you have any like thoughts on this?
I think time to prepare would be good. And so I think it's very reasonable for people to be worrying about those issues now, even though it's not going to happen in the next year or two. Yeah. People should be thinking about those issues.
We haven't even touched on job displacement, which is just my mistake for not bringing it up. Is this just going to eat up just job after job after job after job?
I think it's going to make jobs different. People are going to be doing the more creative end and less of the routine end.
Well, what's the creative if it can write the poem and make the movie and all of that?
Well, if you go back in history and look at ATMs, these cash machines came along, and people said that's the end of bank tellers. It wasn't actually the end of bank tellers. The bank tellers now deal with more complicated things. And take coders. So people say, you know, these things can do simple coding and usually get it right. You just need to get it to write the program and then just check it. So you'll be able to work 10 times as fast. Well, either you could have 10% of the programmers, or you could have the same number of the programmers producing 10 times as much stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a lot of trade-offs like that. Once these things start being creative, there'll be hugely more stuff created.
This is the biggest technological advancement since, is this another industrial revolution? What is this? How should people think of it?
I think it's comparable in scale with the Industrial Revolution or electricity.
Electricity,
or maybe the wheel.
Or maybe the wheel.
Yeah, that was earlier.
Yeah, okay. So buckle up.
Yeah. One of the reasons Toronto got a big lead in AI is because of the policies of the granting agencies in Canada, which don't have much money, but they use some of that money to support curiosity-driven basic research.
Okay.
And so in the States, the funding comes and you have to say what products you're going to produce with it and so on.
Yeah.
Here, some of the government money, quite a lot of it, is given to professors to employ graduate students and other researchers to explore things they're curious about. Yeah. And if they seem to be good at that, then they get more money 3 years later. Yeah. And that's what supported both Yoshua Bengio and me. Yeah. It was money for curiosity-driven basic research. Yeah. And we've seen that before.
Even through decades of not being able to show much.
Yes, even through decades of not being able to show much. So that's one thing that happened in Canada. Another thing that happened was there's a Canadian organization called the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research that provides extra money to professors in areas where Canada is good and provides money for professors to interact with each other when they're far apart, like in Vancouver and Toronto, but also to interact with researchers in other parts of the world, like America and Britain and Israel and so on. And CFAR set up a program in AI. It set up one originally in the 1980s, which is the one that brought me to Canada, which was in symbolic AI. And
and yet you came.
I was an oddball.
Okay.
I was kind of weird because I did this stuff everybody else thought was nonsense. They recognized that I was good at this kind of nonsense. And so they funded
If anyone's going to do the nonsense, it might as well be him.
One of my letters of recommendation said that. It said, you know, I don't believe in this stuff, but if you want somebody to do it, Jeff Hinton's the guy.
Okay.
And then after that program finished, I went back to Britain for a few years. And then when I came back to Canada, they decided to fund a program in deep learning, essentially.
Sentience. I think you have complaints with even just how you define that, right?
Yeah, when it comes to sentience, I'm amazed that people can confidently pronounce these things are not sentient. And when you ask them what they mean by sentient, they say, well, they don't really know. So how could you be confident they're not sentient if you don't know what sentient means?
So maybe they are already.
Who knows? I think whether they're sentient or not depends on what you mean by sentient. So you better define what you mean by sentient before you try and answer the question, are they sentient?
Does it matter what we think, or does it only matter whether it effectively acts as if it is sentient?
It's a very good question, Matt.
And what's your answer?
I don't have one.
Okay. Because if it's not sentient, but it decides for whatever reason that it believes it is, and it needs to achieve some goal that is contrary to our interests, but it believes in its interests, does it really matter if in any human reflection?
Well, I think a good context to think of this in is an autonomous lethal weapon.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's all very well saying it's not sentient, but when it's hunting you down to shoot you, yeah, you're going to start thinking it's sentient.
Or not really caring, not an important standard anymore.
The kind of intelligence we're developing is very different from our intelligence. So it's this idiot savant kind of intelligence. So it's quite possible there's, if it is at all sentient, it's sentient in a somewhat different way from us.
Yeah. But your goal is to make it more like us. And you think we'll get there?
No, my goal is to understand us.
Oh, okay. No, but you...
And I think the way you understand us is by building things like us.
Okay, so that's, I mean...
The physicist called Richard Feynman said, you can't understand things unless you can build them. That's the real test of do you understand it.
And so you've been building.
So I've been building, yeah.
So you see them man a build, with them build, and you see, tough tongue, if you understand them thing, we are running and talk some little thing. It depends on little thing, you know. You watch the world and watch this thing, how dangerous we can fly off even them nuclear, they want to take over the world and do all kind of things. Because I see some other things with attack, you know, and not like to look at humanness and I tell you some things and I say, yeah, more come out a bit more like more free. I want to know hold me, you know. And it's shocking. Me that I show it from last month, you know. But when them come out with this, me I say, John, no, because, you know, because we are watching what go on, you know. This are just 2 months ago interview, because you can't see it. And this 1 month ago. See the next one, yeah.
The future is now, because this morning, a new artificial intelligence tool known as ChatGPT is gaining popularity for its ability to craft emails, write research papers, and answer almost any question in a matter of seconds. It is a powerful new technology with extraordinary potential, but there are also warnings about the huge risk of misuse. You know who knows all about this? Vanessa Yurkevich. She joins us now. Good morning.
Good
Sounds
morning.
interesting.
Intriguing.
Proceed, but with caution.
Intriguing, certainly. And a lot of AI analysts say it's as revolutionary as the internet, but some say it's a threat to society. But one thing is for sure, it's sparking interest among everyone from top CEOs to students.
Yeah, to students.
ChatGPT, short for Chat Generative Pre-Training Transformer, is a machine learning model that can generate human-like text. It's been trained on a massive amount of data, allowing it to understand and respond to a wide range of questions and prompts.
What you just heard me reading wasn't written by me. It was written by artificial intelligence, ChatGPT.
I simply typed in a prompt, write a TV news script written by a reporter about ChatGPT. And in just seconds, the AI spit out the copy you just heard. ChatGPT has exploded in popularity in recent months. CEOs are now using it to write emails. It even passed a Wharton School of Business exam.
Should people be more excited about ChatGPT or more fearful of it?
I think we should have a mixed view.
OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, says the technology is still in its research phase and can produce inaccurate information.
You like artificial intelligence, but are you here to issue a warning about it?
Absolutely. Artificial intelligence is sort of like a teenager right now. It's exciting to see the teenager get its footing, but it's also not there yet and we can't trust it.
But Microsoft thinks it's a good bet, even with some risks. They're investing billions of dollars in OpenAI. Jack Poe, CEO of Ansible Health, had ChatGPT take 3 versions of the U.S. medical licensing test, and it passed all 3.
Not only can it answer very complex questions, it can also modulate its answer.
Poe and his team of 30 doctors started using the platform to help with treatment for their patients who have COPD, a pulmonary disease.
What this technology could really enable, and has already started enabling us, is to suddenly suggest things that we might not be thinking of at all. It will absolutely save lives.
Jake Heller is a lawyer and founder of Case Text, which helps its clients comb through documents using AI like ChatGPT.
You can have it read police reports. You can have it see if witnesses gave contradictory testimony. You can almost certainly help find information that is pertinent to guilt or innocence.
But Poe and Heller both say that human oversight of ChatGPT is still necessary. OpenAI says the platform can produce harmful instructions.
In law, there absolutely is right and wrong answers. And That's why, ChatGPT alone is not going to be enough to handle some of the most important questions in fields like law.
And then there's the question of plagiarism. New York City public schools banned ChatGPT on school network devices due to concerns about negative impacts on student learning and concerns regarding the safety and accuracy of content.
It's incredible innovation. At the same time, it's like opening a Pandora's box.
Which is why Edward Tien, a 22-year-old Princeton student himself, spent his winter break building GPT-0, which he says can detect whether something is likely written by a human or ChatGPT. He says teachers use it to check their students' papers. Is this like one AI cross-checking another AI?
In a sense, yeah.
But can it spot misinformation?
Oh, okay, yeah. So as opposed to misinformation, it's more of like it can only spot if something is AI generated or human generated.
And that's the greatest fear of all, spreading misinformation. ChatGPT, a tool designed to help humanity, could ultimately hurt it.
People who want to manipulate elections and things like that, instead of like writing one thing at a time, you're going to be able to write thousands of things to give, for example, vaccine denialism more oxygen than it deserves.
And Gary Marcus, who you just heard from there, has written books about artificial intelligence. He has founded companies about artificial intelligence. He says we're about 75 years away from AI truly being human-like. Until then, we need regulation. And Representative Ted Lieu from California, he plans to introduce legislation to create an AI commission to oversee all of this new technology. Because we know a lot, but we also know very little about it.
Some people are passing college courses with papers written by ChatGPT.
I just keep thinking of Space Odyssey. HAL, the HAL 9000. Nope.
So them come out with this. Them thing are dangerous, where they can help go do doctor thing and thing, but it's dangerous. Very dangerous. Show our next thing about AI. Look here.
Artificial intelligence, or AI, has come a long way in a relatively short amount of time. From its humble beginnings in the 1950s as a theoretical concept, AI has evolved into a powerful technology that is transforming industries and changing the way we live and work. But with great power comes great responsibility, and as AI continues to advance, it has also raised a number of ethical and practical concerns. One company at the forefront of AI research is DeepMind, an artificial intelligence research lab based in London, England. DeepMind was acquired by Alphabet, Google's parent company, in 2014, and since then, it has been making waves in the world of AI. However, not everyone is convinced that AI is a force for good. Elon Musk is a well-known entrepreneur and CEO of companies such as Tesla and SpaceX. He has frequently expressed his concerns about the potential dangers of artificial intelligence and the risks it imposes to humanity. One of the potential risks of artificial intelligence that has been raised by Elon Musk and others is the possibility of AI becoming sentient and potentially having its own goals and desires that may not align with humans. This raises the question of how we would ensure that such an AI would act ethically and in the best interests of humanity. These are valid questions that we must consider as we explore the capabilities of AI. One area where AI has already made significant strides is in language processing. It's able to understand and generate text in a way that is almost human-like. Many virtual assistants, such as Apple's Siri or Amazon's Alexa, use AI to understand and respond to spoken requests. The ability to recognize and process language is also being tested as a way to gauge the progress of AI development. Some researchers even use humor as a test for AI, as the ability to understand and produce jokes is a complex task that requires advanced language processing skills. But it's not just about replicating human skills. AI can also do things that humans simply can't. For example, it can process vast amounts of data at an incredible speed, helping us make more informed decisions. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are also concerns about the way AI processes information and makes decisions. Unlike humans, it doesn't have emotions or the ability to understand context in the same way. This can lead to problems, such as AI systems making decisions that are biased or unethical. There are also concerns about the potential for a sentient AI to gain a significant advantage over humans, whether it be through access to more resources or simply by virtue of its superior intelligence. This could lead to conflicts between humans and AI and raises the question of how we would address such conflicts. Recently, Google engineer Blake Lemoine made the controversial claim that the company's AI technology, Lambda, had become sentient. This sparked a debate about whether or not it is possible for machines to gain consciousness or subjective awareness, and what it would mean if they did. So, what does it mean for a machine to be sentient? And is it possible for artificial intelligence to achieve this level of consciousness? Is it a revolutionary technology that will change the world for the better, or a dangerous tool that needs to be carefully monitored? These are complex and controversial questions, and we'll be exploring them in more detail in this video.
Yes, it is. Hey, before I came to that, I go to school, you know. So, when you go deep in AI and something where most people, them in Jamaica, them don't even understand them from. I never even listen to him. But I listen to what's wrong, yes, and then you have state and everybody are developed, what them are developed. Then you have some of them things that can see, maybe I can show it from last month, you know. We have to ask some question like that, say, you know, who not own me, you know. And then I ask some question there where you don't believe say to ask. I mean, I say, what is? See? And then I get deeper and deeper into this. It does show like how you have Terminator come and the program and go for it and go for and nothing can stop it and all kind of things. They have to be careful. They have to be careful. See? Yeah, man. Because they make them thing, I remember them thing, you know. Them take the thing for them own, you know, because it's smart, you know. Very smart. And you have something well smart. And remember, you know, the armed forces and them thing, they're more advanced than we have seen of the, you know, natural population, you know. So, you know, them advanced for enough things. They might try to make some of them AI soldiers and all kind of things. We have to be careful. We have to be careful. See? Yeah, man. But we don't think, I mean, they know about AI. So I'm just want to just start some little baby thing at about TikTok. Come on, for that. A baby thing at the pan, man. Baby thing. See? Everything where we never talk about, that documented. You can go on, you just go on TVJ, but you know, just find it documented data and stuff. So you can get them and use them. JS have them, this have them, that have them. So them did it. The crowd did, everybody did it. When you talk about a foolishness, we depend on a bigger thing, but this can destroy the earth if you don't mind sharp. See? And you have enough people at the court against it. Even one of the Godfather will just show a while, you know? You understand? But not for that one day. You must spread propaganda and rumor. Be a fake and propaganda and rumor. Can't deal with that. You understand? That in have no sense. That Christopher Tufton me a chat. Now have no sense. See? If you learn to keep things real, man. Deal with the people, them issue and them thing. They don't know nothing. I don't think they know if you use them phone good. May I tell you this? Them have phone and them have computer. Them most of the apps them pan it, them no use it. And most of them people, if you talk to them, no care see them. They have no fly in Jamaica, that kind of thing. Them don't know if you use them thing good. Then I ask. Tell me, I tell you. Them politicians, them worse. Just go get Mackenzie. Get any one of them. And put it on the tell them to go use. Them don't know. Them just repeat something. See? And repeat foolishness. Stupidness. Because them don't know how advanced. And I say, yeah. And them take off this away him doing that. Them doing that 2016. Take off head. That's a simple thing, man. That's a simple thing. That's about AI in a way. Very intelligent and I do all kind of little things. You know, see I drive now instead of we drive with a map. Remember we used to buy the paper map then? We don't need that again, don't it? No way at all. Eh? We don't need them things again, man. Things more advanced than that now, man. And more accurate. You drive now, you go up on your Google map and you're good. Go on about your business. Google are leading enough things, you know. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Them robots, them have to be careful of what them do. And them are use it for all kind of things. And people are use it for evil same way, so you must know. And then it will try to find itself. And this them deep in right now. Seem like it's exterminator and what have you, you know. And them have the metaverse. I not thought they eat that one when them show Jamaican either. Because our politicians, them not so smart. Them not study nothing, them just go on and just chat a bag of shit. Yeah? Bag of mess. You understand? So we have to fling it back on them and tell them, so move with that, man. I talk about AI. We use AI about Andrew and this and about. We have to be careful there, but right. Stop your foolishness and stop spreading propaganda. You know about AI, man. Man, you're stupid, man. Them just love tell lie and just love like you want to trick up Jamaican people. Most of them don't even have a bank account. Most of them can't even use machine. They never have a bank account, so them don't have a card, so them can't even use machine. Eh? Them can't even use the machine. And they talk about a donkey poop. Eh? Tufton, go study boy AI, man. Backside. Anyway, I carry my daughter go to school, so later, yeah? Bless up. Yeah, man.